this is Richard Kusiolek, and I'm here at SOFIC in Tampa, Florida, and I have a great privilege of talking to someone who has served in the military, who is working with a company that's in robotics, and it's really a great opportunity, I think, to let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about his company. Again, GMCstream television, and we're covering US SOCM here in Tampa. So I'd like to let him introduce himself, and here we go.
Thanks, Richard. Name is Rebara. I'm the Director of Ground Robotics with a company called Roboteam, North America. We are located in Gaithersburg, Maryland. A little bit about myself. I'm a retired Army EOD First Sergeant. 23 years of service. 20 of those years were in bomb disposal. Retired in 2015.
Okay, so a little bit about the company, and tell us a little bit about how you're interfacing with the U.S. Army and providing them with certain types of capabilities. Let's talk about
Indeed. We specialize in unmanned ground vehicles for the platoons size elements. So we have throwable systems. One of them is called the Iris. It's about 3.5 pounds. It's designed to be thrown over walls, into a breach before you go into it, to clear it and check it, into a second-story building.
Sure.
You can drive it around.
Sure.
Suicide payloads. We can fly it. So we're very end-user focused with that particular item. Then we have the MTIGR. It's the Micro Tactical Ground Robot. This is an Air Force program of record. It is a backpackable system. It's in the 25 to 30 pound realm, depending on how you kit it out. And it's mostly been sold to EOD formations, particularly the Air Force. The Air Force bought nearly 200 of these things in 2015. And that's kind of our flagship product right now. The MTIGR is what brought the company and established it here in 2012 in Gaithersburg. It's been a very successful product for us. Our third production item is called the Probot. It's a mule system. It's designed to carry, the weight that is now distributed on soldiers' backs. It's designed to carry all of that weight on the battlefield for soldiers right now. It can carry 1,650 pounds, and it's the smallest, we think it's the smallest form factor robot out there right now that is still stable and functional out in the battlefield. And it can, right now, over hill and over dale, some really rough terrain, we can pull about, under full load, we can pull about 6 hours of operational time, and then we have the ability to then charge those batteries as we roll on and continue. So the potential for this particular mule system for the U.S. military, we think is probably the largest out there. As a mule system, it can work in not just for the infantry, which is the current program. It's called the SMET program, the Squad Multi-Equipment Transport Program for the U.S. Army. But we think that eventually it'll carry weapons platforms, be used in sustainment formations and do logistics work, potentially even in aviation, ferrying things back and forth to aircraft. So we think that the initial SMET program for the infantry, which is about 5,000 systems one day, will eventually spread throughout all forces. It's a big deal. SMET's a big deal. Right now we have a medium-sized platform. It's our first foray into the medium-sized platform arena, and that would be along the lines of what you're probably familiar with on the battlefield today, which is the Talon platform, which is Kinetic's platform. Very good platform. I used it myself as a bomb disposal technician. And the Army is looking to modernize. So it's called MITRS Inc. 2, Manned Transportable Robotic System Increment 2. And that system is the replacement for the fleet Talon Force of the Army. So that program of record, we have submitted a proposal for that, and we expect to hear selection. I believe last time we heard from the PM it would be in end of Q3. So they're looking at the documents right now, and we're, in my opinion, I'd be more surprised if we didn't win it. It's a very it's called the Tiger. We haven't debuted it to the public yet, but we will probably in Q4. and I think everybody will be
Can you tell
excited
us a little
about it.
bit about the Tiger? Is it classified?
Yeah, it's not classified. The Tiger is Tiger's about 160 pounds, fully loaded. It's got extensive reach with almost 2 meters of reach on its arm. We can climb stairs. We can it's modular, so we can put an extensive amount of CBRN platforms onto it and handheld sensors. EOD tools, you can even take all of those things off and integrate completely different sensors onto it. So if you needed to use this for a recon system, you could put other modular sensors for ISR onto it, and you could drive it out, position it. You could even put weapon stations onto it. So the Tiger has also 8 batteries, so we're talking somewhere along the lines of potentially beyond 10 hours of operation time, to include being able to power some of your sensors.
Well, I tell you, this is fascinating for me because I remember reading some of the reports by DARPA about this possibility, but I had no idea your company is right on not on the edge of innovation, but actually in the edge of implementation.
Indeed.
That I think very few people know about. Tell us a little bit more.
So we engage the U.S. Army at the Centers of Excellence. I think that's where we know that the capabilities are being created, or actually the needs analysis are being done, and then the capabilities come out of those things, and we fill those gaps. So we're heavily engaged with the Maneuver Center of Excellence, the Maneuver Support Center of Excellence, the EOD TICM, the Trade-Off Capability Manager, is where I came from, is where I retired out of. So we're deeply embedded into communication with those entities that then draw up the key performance parameters for these documents.
Wow.
And as a former bomb disposal technician, we EOD guys consider themselves to be robotic natives. So EOD for the longest time was the entity within DoD that had robots within their formations since the 80s. Probably sometimes even before that. So we've worked through all of those doctrinal complications to get to a point where we understand what specifically robots do on the battlefield for soldiers across the board. So now it's the Army's turn, the bigger Army's turn, to try to figure out doctrine for bringing backpackable systems to infantry, SMET systems or mule systems to the infantry, and that's kind of a tough sell for those guys because it's something new for them.
Well, not only that, it's probably alien. They feel they're being competitive. It's just like, I don't want to be, compete against a robot. I mean, do they think that way, perhaps?
I don't think so. Not right now. I haven't seen that. I think sustainment does, because there's a lot of automation coming to the large logistic platforms, which will eventually, in the midterm, replace soldiers on the battlefield. But in the infantry, it doesn't appear that that's what they're looking for. They're looking for enhancement to the mission. In other words, creating the ability for an infantryman to take a throwable and toss it out there, or a small UAS, fly it out to sense the enemy before the enemy senses them. So create that safe space between the bad guys and the operator. Give us the upper hand, more planning capability before we launch an attack, so less reactivity for us on the battlefield.
Well, I tell you, this is really going to give a huge edge to the American military. What about some of our adversaries? Are they also thinking the same mindset? What's your view of this?
So what we have seen across the board, specifically in Russia, is that they are already fielding lower technology versions of weapons platforms on the battlefield. They did that in Ukraine, Crimea. The technology isn't as great as ours because it's Russia. Okay? However, their idea is, let's put something on the battlefield and work out the kinks of how these platforms will perform for soldiers on the battlefield. And in my opinion, I think that's also very smart, because that's the complication. Until you get this piece of technology into the dirt, into the mud, into the weather, and into the confusion of the battlefield, you're not really going to be able to war game that on a piece of paper as accurately. So, and that's the thing. So the technology exists in America right now, and in industry in the States.
Sure.
But the doctrine is the real trick to work out. How do we actually implement that in modern land warfare?
Yeah, right.
And the Russians are just going about it the other way. They're not waiting for high tech and then putting it out there. They're going to put low tech out there and build up.
I see.
So and we need to do that. We need to get on the ball right now. We've been concentrating on GWAT type activities, which is basically medium-sized platforms, EOD, counter IED specifically.
Sure.
And as a result of that, we're kind of behind the power curve.
Right.
Everybody else has been moving over here to do more kinetically focused robotics.
So what does the future look like 10 years from now from a robotic sense for the American infantry?
Probably working into, they should have man-portable systems by this time. So we're talking about like our MTIGR product, which is a 25-pound platform. We're talking about the next generation of that being in infantry companies, with the primary mission, at least at this point, looking like it's going to be ISR. Being able to, infantry guy, if they don't have EOD embedded or combat engineer embedded that has a robot already, they have these at the company level. They can go out there and they can identify a hazard potentially, launch a robot at it, and investigate, manipulate the environment and see if it's going to be dangerous.
Well,
And I think you'll see SMET as well. You'll in this same infantry formation, you will see most of the heavy kit on top of some sort of a mule system, and this mule system could even be armed, so that engaging the enemy, soldiers can be in the prone, and with a controller they can, like the Crows system, on top of a one of these mule platforms.
yeah, you know, I'm curious. And so, do you see like maybe the mule platforms will be armored over time? Are they?
So they're looking at that right now
Okay.
for critical portions of the systems.
Okay.
There have been, requests for 7.62 armor and up to 12.7 millimeter 50 cal armor. It's a little bit crazy for us to do that because that's heavy. It's extremely heavy to be 50 cal bulletproof.
Yeah, right.
But 7.62, depending on which 7.62 they're talking about, which we're still working out, there's potential for that to work out.
I'm really curious. Where do you do all your testing? I know military does a lot of testing in Nevada. Are you testing in Nevada for?
Fort Benning in Georgia.
In Georgia,
right there
okay.
in Columbus, Georgia.
Wow.
So our SMET platform with the Probot was. TARDEC did a range assessment for the SMET program in February,
Right.
and it was 60 miles, over 72 hours, river crossings, gap crossings, through the woods, as well as over improved roads and semi-improved roads. It was very arduous. We performed very well.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your time. It's been not only stimulating, but I think it's given me a great sense of mission fulfillment and safety for the American people, and
Absolutely.
to maybe minimize the warfighters who don't need to be injured and so forth, and continue the fight. So I want to thank you very much for your time. It's
Thanks
been
very much,
illuminating.
Richard. I appreciate it.
The easiest way that I have found to explain what we deal with as EOD and all four services is we are able to build and dismantle everything from a pipe bomb to a nuclear weapon and everything in between. There's 10 mission areas that we have in Air Force EOD, and over the last 14 years we have been very laser focused on the IED arena, and rightfully so. 14 years ago, our robotic platforms were significantly different, and we had many of our airmen using a cargo strap, tying it to their back of their rucks, and attaching it to about a 100-pound robot, maybe 110 pounds, and dragging it around. Now we have a robotics platform that is more advanced, has more capabilities, and weighs roughly 25 pounds, and you can put it in your rucksack and walk. As our enemy continues to develop with technology to use against us, we will continually use our technology to develop a better way to take care of the threat that we have faced, no matter where it is at.